ඔෆිස් එකේදී විතරක් නෙවෙයි මම දැන් ගෙදරදීත් IDD calls ගන්න SLT phone එකේ.
ඔබේ නිවසේ SLT දුරකථනය දැන් IDD පහසුකම සහිතයි.
Making headlines on First at 9. Fuel prices sent to orbit. The central bank defends the fuel pricing formula.
So that price adjustment had to take place. And not only that, much of the subsidy actually goes to the more wealthy part of the population.
Opposition politicians and industrialists, however, aren't convinced.
It will not be practical. This is only a plaster.
Of course, it's a part of government's mismanagement.
A co-sponsorship. The President and Minister Vijaydas Rajapaksa submit an epistle on Saitam to the Cabinet.
Students who have got the minimum qualifications in the Saitam medical faculty be absorbed into the Kalevala Defence University.
FX market under scrutiny. The central bank to look into the extra pressure felt by the market.
We will study some of the transactions to look at the behavior of market participants. And if we do observe any manipulation, we will take very stern action.
More on the way. The group of 16 says that 12 more SLFP members of the government are set to cross over. Sticking to the word. New Malaysian Prime Minister is set to follow through on his election pledge and secure pardon for jailed politician.
Very good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Katharina Chan. Now on to your top story tonight. Following the fuel price increase which came into effect today, protests were held by various sectors across the island today. The private bus sector had charged that they hope to increase bus fares by 10%, while three-wheelers expect to increase its minimum charge to 60 rupees.
With yesterday's increase in fuel prices by the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, the price of octane 92 petrol was increased to 137 rupees, while octane 95 was increased to 148 rupees per litre. Price of auto diesel has gone up to 109 rupees, while super diesel is now sold at 119 rupees. Kerosene, which was also included in the price hike, sees the price of a litre jumping from 44 rupees to 101 rupees. The increase in fuel prices comes following cabinet approval of an automatic fuel pricing mechanism consistent with the Extended Fund Facility Supported Programme by the IMF. This will see the prices of fuel being adjusted as per world market prices. According to the Bank of America, collapsing oil production in Venezuela and potential export disruptions in Iran could push the price of Brent crude as high as $100 per barrel in 2019, a level not seen since 2014. They also expect West Texas Intermediate, the most commonly cited US contract, to trade $6 below the price of Brent in 2019.
I must say that Sri Lanka has missed out on a golden opportunity once again to manage its fuel exposure, because when crude oil prices were at $45 a barrel, given the backwardation of the fuel curve, Sri Lanka could have actually engaged in risk management strategy to protect itself from rising fuel oil prices as a result of the business cycle that we're seeing coming to a conclusion, where we are seeing crude oil prices, particularly commodities, now once again starting to rise. Now this has a significant bearing on the real sector.
Meanwhile, various sectors in the industry have expressed concerns in the recent fuel price hike as per the automatic fuel price formula.
Definitely, construction sector can't cope up for two reasons. The construction sector they sign the contracts for not overnight contracts. This is for 6 months, 1 year, most probably they are 2 years, some are 3 years, 4 years. Then they they take competitive bidding and fix a price. Then what happens, these type of things, until it is getting established, probably it might take about a year also.
So anyway, we cannot predict. First, we have to see the market, how market behave for this fuel price fluctuation. Now we are having a strong discussion on coming Monday, not regarding fuel price increase, regarding the 3 years what we are going to do is something like a action plan preparation. I think at that forum it will be discussed. regarding the agriculture commodities, I think we have to see how the market pattern, market behave like this.
The transport sector is another area in which the increasing price of fuel will impact day-to-day costs. Private bus associations have charged that with this hike, they expect to increase ticket prices by 10% in the near future. Furthermore, three-wheeler associations too have taken a decision to increase the minimum charge to 60 rupees. A protest was organized by a group of self-employed three-wheeler drivers in Nugegoda this afternoon over the fuel price increase. They request authorities to provide a concession for three-wheeler drivers by Monday. Convening a media briefing today, the All-Island General Fisheries Federation charged that if the government does not reduce prices of fuel, they are prepared to commence an all-island strike. A group of SLPP provincial councillors from Rathgama Pradeshya Sabha and Hikkadu Urban Council held a protest today on bullock carts and bicycles in Rathgama. Southern Provincial Councillor Krishanta Pushpakumar too held a protest today. Meanwhile, various views were expressed by politicians on the recent fuel hike.
Suddenly the government has started talking about a fuel formula. Is it practical? Is the other question. For the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation to implement such formula, they'll have to be concerned about the heavy debt that they are carrying. Without a solution to relieve Petroleum Corporation of their debts, it will not be practical. This is only a plaster.
As a government, we don't want to tax the people of this country. But unfortunately, due to the corruption of past regime, they have made this country from poor to poor, and we are facing an economical crisis because of the last regime. We want to build the economy of the country, and without taxation, increasing taxation, we want to simplify the people's livelihood. So that's what we are trying to do.
The delay of the government to take this decision, dragging on, of course, is a part of government's mismanagement, which is costing the country. When the Rajapaksa government, when sent out of office, the prices were dropping, and it dropped to the benefit of the January 8th victory of Sirisena government. The price in the international markets dropped to $30. The government has chosen to a sudden price increase, and this will propel further price increases, not going to stop as announced, which will propel cost of living issues to the people.
I'm upset that the government officials let the rupee depreciate in line with the desire of the IMF. There are a number of taxes. If these taxes are reduced, the fuel prices don't have to be increased. In a backdrop where we have given promises to people, we can do more things with substance for them.
At a media briefing today, Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy, spoke of the need of an automatic fuel pricing mechanism.
For me anyway, the key rationale is the CPC made losses of 11.9 billion in the first 2 months or 3 months of this year. So clearly it can't hemorrhage like that. And our prices were significantly less than countries in the region. Even now with the adjustment, our prices are lower than any other country in the region. So that price adjustment had to take place. Really, we need to completely rehaul our social safety. We need to identify the poor and vulnerable and support them through income transfer. So that's what's happening now.
Parliamentarian of the United People's Freedom Alliance, S.B. Dissanayake, reveals that another group of 12 members of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party who are in the national government stands ready to cross over to the opposition. The parliamentarian made the remark today while addressing media after calling on the Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjit.
10 parliamentarians from the group of 16 members of the SLFP who defected to the opposition called on Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjit this morning.
Although the president always wants to go for discussions and arrive at solutions, the Prime Minister's party thought that this is a single-party government. The thinking of the UNP is more into capital. Sri Lanka Freedom Party was brought forward, giving prominence to nationality, religion and culture. Therefore, I do not think that the SLFP can move forward with this kind of thinking. Letting the foreign forces intervene in governance is suicidal. We expect leadership from the president in this regard. We should not be afraid of anyone. He should stand straight. Therefore, inform the president about the matter.
Following the meeting, the parliamentarians expressed views to media.
The president promised to convene the Central Committee on the 17th. Sri Lanka Freedom Party must take stern action. He has agreed to a restructure. Through that, we don't expect to remain in this government.
මේ රජයේ රැඳී සිටීම නෙමෙයි අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ.
තව 6 දෙනෙක් එනවා කියලා තියෙනවා. දැන් කවුද?
ඒක 12 දෙනෙක් කතා කර ඉන්නවා. මේ අය මේ ඕන වෙලාවක එන්න ලැහැස්ති.
ඔබතුමාලාට එන්න 12 දෙනා අතරට මහලේකම්වරු දෙදෙනාත් අයිතිද?
එහෙම කියන්න බෑ පුතා.
Former Parliamentarian of the United People's Freedom Alliance, Shant Bandara, is appointed as the new chairman of the State Timber Corporation. He accepted the letter of appointment from President Maithripala Sirisena today.
Former Member of Parliament Shanta Bandara was appointed as the new chairman of the State Timber Corporation today by President Maithripala Sirisena. The position was vacated with the arrest of the corporation's chairman P. Disanayake, along with the president's then Chief of Staff Dr. IHK Mahanama on bribery charges last week. Then Anuruddha Polgampala was briefly appointed as the new chairman of State Timber Corporation, but it was suspended. Meanwhile, AHM Fauzi also took oath before the President today as the State Minister for National Unity and Reconciliation. The President also witnessed President's Counsel Arya Bandara Rekhawa taking oath as the Governor of Uva Province at the President's official residence today.
President Maithripala Sirisena, along with the Minister of Higher Education, Dr. Vijayadasa Rajapaksa, submitted an epistle to the Cabinet today on 980 students from Saitam being absorbed to the Kotalavala Defence University. Meanwhile, the bill on amending the Kotalavala Defence University Act, which was scheduled to be presented to Parliament today, was withdrawn.
Chief Government Whip Minister Gayantha Karunatilaka today informed Parliament that although the bill to amend Sir John Kotalavala Defence University Act was included in the agenda, it will not be presented to the House today. The Government Medical Officers Association also weighed in on the matter.
The GMOA had a cordial and a fruitful discussion with Minister Vijayadasa Rajapaksa. He affirmed that there is no requirement to bring a new act on Kotalavala University as a solution for this item issue. After having discussions with the Attorney General, the Minister clearly stated that the Attorney General too is of the stance that this problem can be solved by minor amendments made to the current Act.
පවතින පනතට ඉතා කුඩා සංශෝධනයක් ගෙනීම හරහා මේ ප්‍රශ්න විසඳන්න පුළුවන් කියන ස්ථාවරයේ ගරු නීතිපතිතුමත් ඉන්නවයි කියන එක.
Minister of Higher Education Dr. Vijayadasa Rajapaksa meanwhile said that an epistle was submitted to the Cabinet by him along with the President to absorb 980 students from Saitam to the Kotalavala Defence University.
During last few days, with the direction and the guidance of His Excellency the Prime Minister, we had several meetings with the relevant parties, and finally we came to a conclusion to students who have got the minimum qualifications in the Saitam medical faculty be absorbed into the Kotalavala Defence University. They will make an evaluation about the standard of their education. Depending on that, they will be absorbed into a suitable level. Then they will be given clinical training by the doctors. In addition to that, they need the clinical training from professorial units of teaching hospitals. At the moment that there is a hospital belongs to this Kotalavala Defence University, and we will establish necessary professorial units for these students to have their professorial training. Those students who will complete their examination as well as their training will be conferred the medical degree MBBS from the Sir John Kotalavala Defence University.
Minister of Wildlife Field Marshal Sarat Fonseka insists that he did not seek the forgiveness of President Maithripala Sirisena The minister made the remark in response to the statement by Cabinet co-spokesperson Minister Dr. Rajda Senaratne, who said that Minister Fonseka sought forgiveness from the President.
There was statements saying that I prostrated myself before the President and sought forgiveness. I do not reject any political statement I made, since that's my stance. There was a discussion the day before yesterday after the Cabinet meeting upon the request of the Prime Minister at his office. It was attended by myself, Minister Malik Samaravikrama, the President and the Prime Minister, during which the President said that if there are any issues among us, there's no need to speak to media since we know each other well. I responded saying it happened under the prevalent circumstances and we can work together in the future. But a cadre of redundant politicians and members of the media who doubt them have coined a story saying that I sought forgiveness from the President. I would never do such a thing. I hear even Cabinet spokespersons have made the claim, and to which I say Cabinet spokesperson is a position of responsibility and we condemn such comments.
There were developments in a couple of court cases today, with the case against Venerable Uduwe Dhammalokithera filed for possessing an elephant calf without a license being one of them. The other is a fundamental rights petition filed seeking to lift the restrictions imposed on the bank accounts of former Sri Lankan ambassador to Russia, Udayanga Weeratunga.
The Supreme Court today refused to proceed with the fundamental rights petition filed seeking to lift the restrictions imposed on the bank accounts of former Sri Lankan ambassador to Russia, Udayanga Weeratunga. The petition was reportedly filed by the ex-diplomat's mother-in-law, stating that the issuing of warrant for the arrest of Weeratunga and the suspension of his bank accounts were in violation of his fundamental rights. However, the three-member judge bench comprising Justices Buwane Kalubihare, Sisira Diabru and Nalin Pereira decided to dismiss the petition without taking it up for hearing. In the meantime, the Colombo High Court today decided to call for evidence of the defendant in the case against Venerable Uduwe Dhammalokithera, who is accused of keeping in possession an elephant calf without a license. The legal counsel representing the Thera said that the defendant is prepared to testify before the court in person. The court ordered the Thera's attorney to produce the defendant's list of evidence on the 17th of July.
Let's now take a look at some other stories making news across Sri Lanka.
The Department of Railways say that the upcountry railway line, which experienced delays due to a strike by station masters and other employees, is now brought back to normalcy. A speeding bus veered off-road in the area of Polon Marua of Tangol. The accident left the region without electricity. 3 persons who arrived in a vehicle shot and killed a person in the area of Sirimapur of Trincomalee at around 6 this morning. A group of Australians and Americans who study the art of playing drums took tutelage under dancing guru Karunaratne Bandara recently. The visiting group studied the art under him for 2 weeks. Wildlife officials of Minipay successfully captured a wild elephant, what had become a problem animal. People in Doraliyadda, Moragahamula and Vegala were affected by the elephant.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Derana 24/7.
Central Bank says the Sri Lanka rupee is showing signs of stabilization after coming under pressure for money printed from late March to enforce lower interest rates. The rupee fell sharply from 155 rupee levels in April to 157 levels after the central bank printed money to enforce low rates. Speaking at the monthly media briefing on CBSL's Monetary Policy Review, Dr. Kumaraswamy said today that market transactions would be probed to understand the extra pressure and take necessary action. Meanwhile, during the first quarter of this year, Central Bank expects the economy to grow at 3.7%, well below potential.
As we explained at the last meeting, we do not see any fundamental reason why the currency should be under pressure at this point. Downward pressure on the currency is to be expected, but not as much as we have seen. But the good sign is that in the last few days that pressure has begun to abate, and the Senior Deputy Governor just told me that today things seem to be looking pretty stable so far. So why we say that the pressure is not well aligned to the underlying fundamentals is because if you look at the underlying fundamentals, our reserves are at historically very high levels. The real effective exchange rate index is at 100. So we don't see any reason why there should be pressure on the currency.
The governor revealed that investigations are underway as to why extra pressure came through in the foreign exchange market in the last 10 to 14 days.
We will study some of the transactions, transaction by transaction, to see what has happened, to look at the behavior of market participants. We've now have a flexible exchange rate management system which is very transparent, and for that system to work well, the market participants must also behave well. They need to be disciplined and also not try to manipulate the market. So we will be very alert to see whether there is any manipulation that takes place of the market, and if we do observe any manipulation, we will take very stern action, because there has to be a quid pro quo. If we are to open up the market and try to have a market-oriented approach, then the market participants have to also behave well.
The Sri Lankan rupee closed steady against the US dollar today near the historic low 157.85 cents and 158.10 cents against the US dollar in the spot market, unchanged from the previous close. Dealers said there was uncertainty in the market, with the monetary authority intervening to defend the currency and central bank governor insisting that forex dealers would be probed.
Actually, the impact of depreciation on the economy, I think that it has positive and negative impacts. On the fiscal side, there is a positive impact given the current structure of receipts and payments. Also, it has a positive impact on the balance of payments in the sense that it incentivizes exports and discourages import. But where there is a challenge when the currency depreciates is the fact that it has an impact on the cost of living, on inflation. And one has to take particular cognizance of this because we have a very high import component in our basic consumption. We need to build up our exports if we are to get out of the very challenging debt dynamics that confront the country. So we need to have a competitive exchange rate. And you know, the exchange rate will go up and down. It's possible that the political uncertainty also played its part.
How much of dollars have you expended thus far in defending the currency?
136.65 million US dollars. In these days, we were also able to purchase 30 million. So in net term, it's about 100 million.
අවස්ථා කීපයකදීම ප්‍රකාශ කර සිටියා රටේ ආර්ථික ස්ථාවරත්වය ඇතිවීමට නම් දේශපාලන ස්ථාවරත්වයක් අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම ඇති යුතුයි කියලා. ඔබ හිතන්නේ මේ වෙනකොට ඒ ස්ථාවරත්වය ඇති වෙලා තියෙනවද?
That's a good question. For me, the ultimate test is whether the government can continue to function effective. You know, if you say that the instability started with the local government election outcome, the Active Liability Management Act was passed. The Indian Revenue Act was enacted in November, I think, but anyway, it was introduced and launched. Then on our side, we have a major priority is the amendments to the Monetary Law Act to create the conditions for a flexible inflation targeting regime, which also gives a legal and accountability framework which will provide greater independence to the central bank. So the concept paper setting out those amendments was approved by cabinet. Most of all, the pricing formula, politically extremely difficult. There are some difficult things that the government is getting done. Now, our politics is always very untidy, as you know, and it gets more untidy and less untidy as we go along, but it is generally untidy. The important thing is the government continues to function effectively and taking decisions which are necessary to stabilize the economy on the one hand and to strengthen the growth framework on the other.
Sri Lankan shares closed little change today as most investors stayed on the sidelines to see the real impact of a hike in fuel prices. The Osha price index fell for a fifth straight session and ended 0.01% weaker at 6,478.87, its lowest close since 11th of April. Let's now cross over to Stefan Dialvis from NDB Securities for a detailed report on how the market performed during this week.
During the week, the ASPI lost 0.4% mainly due to price losses in counters such as Distilleries, John Keells Holdings and Dialogue Axiata. Similarly, the S&P SL20 decreased by 0.5%. The average daily turnover for the week was up from last week to 802 million rupees. Diversified sector recorded the highest sector turnover during the week, while the second highest was seen in banks, finance and insurance sector. Furthermore, foreigners remained active for the week, closing as net buyers, where foreign purchases accounted for 53% of the total weekly turnover. A net foreign inflow of nearly 253 million rupees was recorded for the week. Out of the weekly turnover, block trades accounted for nearly 40%, which was a higher proportion than last week.
Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Derana 24/7.
New Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad says the country's monarch had indicated he was willing to grant a full pardon to jailed politician Anwar Ibrahim. Anwar and Mahathir, former allies and then implacable foes, joined hands to contest this week's election and oust the administration of Najib Razak. Anwar is in custody on charges of sodomy and corruption and cannot take any office until he is pardoned and released.
Mahathir Mohamad, who took oath as Malaysia's Prime Minister yesterday, says that Malaysia's king has agreed to pardon a politician whose case has gripped national politics for 2 decades. Anwar Ibrahim, once considered a potential future leader, was jailed on charges of corruption and sodomy after falling out with the government. Mahathir, the PM under which he was first jailed, just won an election on a pledge of freeing him. Anwar served as the Deputy Prime Minister of Malaysia from 1993 to 1998 and Finance Minister from 1991 to 1998. However, he was removed from his post by Mahathir Mohamad and jailed in April 1999. His prosecution was criticized by human rights groups. Following his release in 2004, Anwar became the leading figure in the opposition and helped him form a coalition of opposition parties which contested the 2008 and 2013 general elections. A second sodomy conviction was upheld in 2015 under Najib's government, sending Anwar to jail for a 5-year prison sentence. After his imprisonment, a new opposition coalition named the Pakatan Harapan, or the Alliance of Hope, was formed with Anwar as the leader. Mahathir has said he will step aside and hand over the Prime Minister's post to Anwar once he is pardoned.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says that the remaining signatories of the Iran deal were working to find ways to preserve it because it was important to keep the international agreement in place despite the US withdrawal from it. Speaking at the news conference in Moscow after his talks with the German Foreign Minister, Lavrov says that the United States should not exert any extraterritorial influence on Iran's partners after its withdrawal from the Iran nuclear deal.
On Tuesday, US President Donald Trump announced that he intends to pull the country out of the nuclear deal struck with Iran. Trump has called the Iran deal negotiated during the administration of Trump's Democratic predecessor, Barack Obama, the worst deal ever negotiated, and he wants Britain, France and Germany, which also signed the pact along with Russia and China, to toughen up the terms. In response, Russia says that the United States should not exert any extraterritorial influence on Iran's partners. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says that the remaining signatories of the Iran deal were working to find ways to preserve it because it was important to keep the international agreement in place despite the US withdrawal from it. In the meantime, the EU governments are mulling over measures to protect interests of their companies as they may suffer a major setback following the United States' decision to reimpose sanctions on Iran. A number of European countries began their increasingly deepened economic cooperation after the signing of the Iran nuclear deal in July 2015. Data from the European Union shows that 21 companies from 5 European countries, including Germany, France and the United Kingdom, have been investing in Iran. Among them are major European companies such as Siemens, Total, Volkswagen and Airbus.
Now let's take a look at other emerging stories from across the world.
7 people were found dead at a rural property in Western Australia today, with bodies of 4 children and 3 adults discovered in the town of Osmington, 280 kilometers south of Perth. Authorities would not say how the victims died, but confirmed that 2 firearms were found at the scene. If confirmed to be a mass shooting, it would be Australia's worst, since a massacre in Tasmania claimed the lives of 35 people in 1996. The death toll from Kenya's dam burst has risen to at least 41, with homes across a vast area of farmland being swept away. The breach happened on Wednesday near the town of Solai, 190 kilometers northwest of the capital, Nairobi, and the dead are thought to include children and women trapped in mud. The Iraqi journalist who found fame and notoriety for throwing his shoe at former US President George W. Bush during a 2008 press conference in Baghdad is running for office in Iraq's 12th of May parliamentary elections. Little-known Shiite Muntazir Ali Zaidi, a former reporter, was said to have harbored anger against Bush for the thousands of Iraqis who died after the 2003 US-led invasion. Throwing shoes at someone is one of the worst insults in the Arab world. A major lagoon just south of Santiago in Chile has dried up, leaving livestock scavenging for food and residents wondering what's next. The Aculio Lagoon has gone from a 12 square kilometer thriving water sport destination with swimmers and boating to a scorched and dusty plain. According to experts, this is the first time the lagoon has dried up in 2000 years.
World number 1 Rafael Nadal set a new record of winning 50 consecutive sets on a single surface by beating Diego Schwartzman last evening in the Madrid Open. The Mallorcan surpassed John McEnroe's previous record of 49 consecutive sets on carpet, which had stood since 1984. In another high-profile match, world number 1 Juan Martín del Potro was knocked out by Dusan Lajovic. It was a special evening for the world's top-ranked tennis player Rafael Nadal as he set a new record of winning 50 consecutive sets on a single surface by beating Diego Schwartzman 6-3, 6-4 at the Madrid Open. Nadal surpassed John McEnroe's previous record of 49 consecutive sets on carpet, which had stood since 1984, and will face Austrian Dominic Thiem in the last 8. Meanwhile, world number 6 Juan Martín del Potro crashed out after Serbia's Dusan Lajovic came back from a set down to beat the Argentine 3-6, 6-4, 7-6 in the third round. In the quarterfinals, Lajovic will meet South Africa's Kevin Anderson, who overcame German Philipp Kohlschreiber 6-3, 7-6. Britain's Kyle Edmund, in the meantime, followed up his surprise win over Novak Djokovic by defeating world number 10 David Goffin 6-3, 6-3 to reach the last 8 of an ATP Masters 1000 event for the first time in his career. Edmund will next face Canadian teenager Denis Shapovalov, who achieved a 6-4, 6-4 win over compatriot Milos Raonic.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
Shanla Fernando is at the Weather Centre with your forecast first evening edition.
A very good evening and welcome to Forecast First. Your temperatures for tomorrow are to vary between 21 and 32 degrees Celsius, with the highest temperatures expected in Mullaitivu. Well, looking at the map, a low pressure zone is set to develop along the coastal belt from Mannar to Galle over the next 24 hours. Well, no signs of sunny weather reported tomorrow, as many areas of the island, including Jaffna, Mannar, Vaunia and Anuradhapura, Kandy, Colombo, Galle and Matara, as well as Hambantota, will experience heavy showers, with thunder showers also expected. That's all we have from the Weather Centre tonight. Up next is your city-by-city forecast.
It's never easy for children to visit the dentist, but for a child suffering from autism, it can be a challenge. Now in Chile, therapy dogs are being called to the dentist's chair to soothe fears. Today, our good story is about Zuka, who is a black therapy Labrador who has helped dozens of children being treated at dentists. The owner of Zuka, Rahul Varela, started a non-profit organization 5 years ago. specifically for autistic children who are often susceptible to shock from the bright lights and noise equipment at the dental office. Only female dogs are used for the purpose as they are usually calmer. Varela said he has received good feedback from parents and overcame obstacles by some dentists who at first were a bit hesitant. How often does it occur to us that human's best friend can also be a healer and a therapist? And we conclude this edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining us and have a pleasant weekend.